Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever had that feeling where your brain seems almost stuck? Like it keeps showing you a version of reality that feels really negative or, I don't know, just off.
Oh, definitely. It's like there's this little voice, isn't there, pointing out all the potential problems even when things seem fine.
Exactly that voice. And that's really what we're digging into today. We've gone through a whole bunch of sources, articles, research papers, you name it all, looking at these specific thought patterns that kind of mess with our perception.
They call them cognitive distortions.
Right, cognitive distortions,
Mm,
sort of like mental shortcuts that have gone a bit haywire. Unconscious filters, almost, that stop us seeing things
well,
objectively.
and our goal here, looking at all this material, is to really boil it down, figure out what these distortions actually are.
Yeah, and highlight the common ones with some clear examples.
And really get across why just spotting them in your own thought process can be such a huge step for your well-being.
The sources are pretty clear. This isn't some niche thing.
Yeah.
Most people experience these distortions to some degree.
Absolutely. It's not about diagnosing a problem, really. It's more about understanding a common way the mind works sometimes.
And that understanding, the sources really stress this, is the crucial first step. You need it to start lessening their grip on your daily life.
Couldn't agree more.
So, okay, let's get specific. For anyone listening, maybe you've heard the term, maybe not. Based on the sources we reviewed, what exactly are cognitive distortions at their core?
Well, they're consistently described as faulty, often irrational interpretations of reality.
Faulty interpretations. Okay.
Yeah. And what's key is that they're not just random bad thoughts, they're patterns, like ingrained habits of thinking. One source put it nicely, they create a negatively biased
A
lens.
negatively biased lens.
Right.
Wow, that sounds like it would ripple outwards, right? What did the sources say about the actual impact these patterns have?
They generally point to two big things. First, they can seriously hinder functional interaction with one's environment.
Meaning, if your view of things is skewed, you won't react appropriately.
Exactly. Your response might just not fit the reality of the situation. And second, they foster the emergence of harmful emotional responses.
Ah, so the distortion doesn't just describe things negatively, it actually generates the negative feeling.
Precisely. The thought fuels the emotion, which can then reinforce the thought. It's a cycle.
Okay, that makes sense.
And zooming out, understanding these specific patterns helps you realize your reactions aren't always driven by objective facts, but by this filter. And that realization, the sources argue, is just crucial for minimizing their impact on everything: daily life, mental well being, even physical health sometimes, because you can't change a pattern you don't see.
Right, you have to notice it first. Okay, this is where it gets really practical and honestly quite relatable. The sources break down the most common types and the examples they give. They really hit home. Shall we dig into some of those?
Let's do it. It's fascinating how these play out.
Okay, first up, one that I think many people might recognize, perfectionism.
hmm The sources define this as an inflexible and unrealistic demand for flawlessness. It's this core belief that you must always perform correctly and perfectly, no room for error.
It's not just having high standards then, it's more extreme.
Much more. It's the demand for zero mistakes. And the example given is really telling. Someone believing that making a mistake equates to being worthless.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're constantly pushing themselves, perfect child, perfect partner, perfect employee, putting themselves under immense pressure.
And then beating themselves up harshly when they inevitably slip up, because we all do. The idea is your whole value hinges on never making a mistake.
Exactly. It turns normal human imperfection into a catastrophe.
That feels linked actually to another one the sources talk about, black and white thinking, sometimes called all or nothing or polarized thinking.
Very connected. If perfectionism demands flawlessness, black and white thinking sees anything less than flawless as total failure. It frames everything in extremes. Something is either entirely good or entirely bad.
No gray areas.
None. No middle ground. So you might see someone as either a complete success or a total failure. Or maybe you feel a bit sad and your mind jumps to joy is impossible right now. It dismisses any complexity or mixed feelings.
It just strips all the nuance out of life,
Yeah.
basically. People, situations, everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. What about mind reading?
Ah, yes. This is where you assume we know what others are thinking,
Yeah.
and crucially, it's usually assuming something negative, often without any real evidence.
So you're just inventing their thoughts? And usually the worst version.
Kinda, yeah.
Mm.
You're making these leaps, the examples are spot on. You give a presentation, and you're convinced people think you're boring or foolish, even if they seemed engaged.
Right, you just know.
Or assuming someone dislikes you or is envious, even if you've barely spoken to them. It's all happening in your head based on, well, nothing concrete.
That sounds like a recipe for anxiety.
It absolutely is. It can really damage relationships or stop them forming based on pure guesswork.
And speaking of assuming the worst, catastrophizing.
hmm This one is about anticipating the worst case scenario, even when there's absolutely no logical reason to jump there.
Taking a small worry and blowing it way out of proportion.
Exactly. Turning a molehill into a mountain every time. The sources mention things like avoiding all travel because you're sure an accident is inevitable.
Despite the statistics being tiny.
Right. Or getting a minor stomach ache and immediately concluding it must be a serious illness. Your brain leaps straight to the disaster.
That sounds exhausting, living in constant high alert.
It really is. Unnecessary alarm. Constantly.
Okay, what about overgeneralization? How does that one work?
This is where you take broad assumptions based on isolated events. One negative thing happens, and you expect it to repeat indefinitely.
So one bad experience becomes the rule for everything.
Pretty much, like you have one minor car accident and decide you can never drive again because another one is bound to happen.
Or maybe you get betrayed by one partner and conclude all future partners will do the same thing.
Exactly that. A single data point dictates your entire future outlook in that area. It's based on really flimsy evidence, but feels totally convincing.
And really limiting, I imagine.
Definitely limits your choices and experiences.
Okay, another one mentioned is denial.
Right. This is basically refusing to acknowledge real problems or difficulties. It often looks like downplaying emotional distress or minimizing concerns, even when they're pretty obvious.
So like ignoring physical pain or clear signs of burnout.
Yeah, or insisting, I'm fine, this isn't affecting me. When a situation is clearly upsetting you, you just refuse to see or admit the difficult reality.
Trying to avoid it, basically.
It's an avoidance tactic. Might feel better short term, but the problem doesn't go away.
Makes sense. Okay, then there's emotional reasoning. This one sounds subtle.
It is, and it's really common because it feels logical. It's the belief that your emotional state reflects objective truth. In other words, I feel it, therefore it must be true.
Ah, okay. So if I feel stupid, that means I am stupid,
Mm.
regardless of evidence.
Precisely. Or if someone's behavior makes you feel angry or slighted, you conclude that person is bad or intended harm without considering other possibilities. Your feeling becomes the proof.
Wow, yeah. That bypasses all rational thought, doesn't it?
Completely. Your emotion dictates your reality.
And closely related to that, the sources mention global labeling.
Yes, similar territory. This is when you assign a global fixed label to oneself or others based on limited traits or isolated actions. Instead of describing a behavior, you define the entire person.
So not I struggled with that task, but I'm useless.
Exactly. Or the example given. Trying to learn a language is hard, so instead of saying this is challenging, you conclude, I'm stupid.
Mhm.
You've labeled your whole identity based on one specific difficulty.
Or calling someone else a jerk based on one interaction.
Right. It reduces complex people, including yourself, to these simplistic, harsh stereotypes, really hinders understanding and growth.
Okay, and finally, there's an underlying tendency mentioned, negativity bias.
This is a big one. It's the basic tendency to magnify negative experiences while minimizing or dismissing positive ones. Your brain just gives more weight to the bad stuff.
So you focus on the one criticism in a sea of praise.
Exactly. Or you start the day just assuming it's going to be terrible. You might think I'll never get what I want, or decide about someone you haven't met, I won't like this person. There's no evidence, just this default expectation of negativity.
Seeing the glass as half empty, or maybe completely empty.
Or maybe even cracked and leaking. Yeah, it creates this constant internal pessimism. Can definitely become a self-fulfilling prophecy too.
Wow. Okay, so looking back at that list, perfectionism, black and white thinking, mind reading, catastrophizing, overgeneralization, denial, emotional reasoning, global labeling, negativity bias, it's quite a lot. And it feels like these could easily become ingrained habits.
They often are.
So the big question then, if these are learned patterns, like the sources say, can we actually do anything about them? Can they be unlearned?
Yes, that's the really hopeful message in the material. Because they are learned, they can also be unlearned. It takes effort, but it's possible.
How? What do the sources suggest?
They point strongly towards techniques known as cognitive restructuring. This is a core part of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Okay, CBT. I've heard of it.
Right. And the basic idea is learning to actively identify, challenge, and replace these distorted thoughts with ones that are more balanced, more realistic.
So it's like retraining your brain's automatic responses.
That's a great way to put it. It's conscious work, but very powerful. And the sources actually provide a simple 3-step exercise you can try yourself to start getting a handle on this.
Oh, brilliant. Let's walk through that. Practical steps are always good.
Definitely. It's a foundational skill for noticing these patterns as they happen.
Okay, step 1. Identify the emotion. What exactly are you feeling? Try to name it sadness, anger, anxiety, whatever it is. And importantly, notice the physical side too. Tension, tight chest, butterflies. The sources say this links the mind and body awareness.
It's about tuning into the signal first, what's actually going on.
Right. Then step 2. Identify the thought. Once you've pinpointed the emotion, rewind a little. What thoughts were going through your head right then or just before you felt that way? What was that internal chatter saying?
Things like, I feel awful, or this is hopeless, everything always goes wrong for me, maybe I'm definitely going to fail this.
Trying to catch that automatic thought linked to the feeling.
Exactly. Because that thought is often where the distortion lies. It's the reason your brain gives for the feeling.
Okay, makes sense. And then step 3, recognize the distortion. Now you look closely at that thought you caught. Ask yourself, is this really true? Or does it sound like one of those patterns we talked about?
Can you label it? Ah, that's catastrophizing, or oops, mind reading again.
And then this seems key, or you challenge the thought, examine it logically, objectively.
This is where the active work comes in. You question it. What's the actual evidence for this thought? What evidence contradicts it? Is there another, more balanced way to see this?
Like that example they gave, if you're terrified of travel because you fear an accident.
Right. You challenge it by reminding yourself, okay, statistically, the risk is actually very low. There are safety measures I can take. My fear is strong, but it doesn't have to dictate my choices.
So you're deliberately bringing in facts and logic to counter the distorted feeling or thought.
Exactly. You're consciously building a new, more realistic mental habit. Takes practice, of course.
Of course. But it feels empowering, like you're not just stuck with those automatic negative loops.
That's the whole point. You can learn to intervene.
So to kind of wrap up this deep dive, we've seen that cognitive distortions are these super common, often unconscious ways our thinking can get skewed, painting our reality negatively or just inaccurately.
Faulty interpretations, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And the really powerful message from these sources is that because we learn these patterns, we can also learn to identify them, challenge them, and gradually reshape our internal dialogue.
Reshape our internal dialogue. I like that.
Yeah. And cultivating these healthier, more realistic perspectives, as the material puts it, is foundational for better emotional regulation, resilience, and overall well-being. It's about taking back some control over your inner world.
It really is. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Having heard about these common patterns now, perfectionism, mind reading, catastrophizing, all of them, which ones, if any, sound familiar? Which ones resonate with your own internal conversations? And just consider, how might simply noticing them when they pop up start to change things for you? Something to mull over.